I want to tell you something that still feels unreal when I say it out loud because, for a long time, it was just a knot in my stomach, a memory I tried not to replay. It started with a gun pointed at my chest on a quiet street, and it ended with a man losing everything he thought made him powerful. And yeah, before you ask, it all happened because someone looked at me and decided they already knew my story. It was one of those afternoons where the air feels heavy like it's pressing down on your shoulders. I was driving through a suburban neighborhood, nice lawns, quiet houses, the kind of place where people wave at each other and pretend nothing bad ever happens. I was behind the wheel of a dark SUV, clean, expensive looking, and I already knew that alone was enough to make me stand out. I hadn't broken any laws. I was under the speed limit seatbelt on my work. Then the lights flashed in my mirror. No siren. Just red and blue, sharp and sudden, like a question you didn't ask for. I pulled over the way I always do, slow, careful windows down, engine off. My hands went to the steering wheel without thinking, muscle memory built from years of being cautious in situations where caution sometimes still isn't enough. I told myself it would be quick. A warning, maybe nothing at all. But when the officer walked up, I felt it immediately, that tightness in the air, that sense that this wasn't about traffic. He didn't say hello, didn't say good afternoon. He leaned in and demanded my license like he was already annoyed I existed. When I asked why I'd been stopped, his eyes narrowed. He looked past me at the interior, at the suit jacket in the back seat at the empty passenger side, and then back at me. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that says, "I've got you now." He made a comment about the car, about how expensive it looked, about how someone like me must have worked very hard to afford it. The words weren't loud, but the meaning was clear. I told him calmly where my ID was in my jacket and that I was going to reach for it. He snapped at me to keep my hands where he could see them. Then he demanded the license again. We went in a circle for about 5 seconds, and those 5 seconds felt like a warning bell. I could feel my heart picking up speed, not from guilt, but from experience. I knew what this tone led to. Then he said it. A single word tossed out casually like it didn't weigh anything at all. Boy. That word doesn't echo, it sinks. It sits in your chest. I kept my voice steady anyway because I've learned that anger only gives people like that exactly what they want. I repeated myself, slow, clear, explaining my movements. He didn't listen. He stepped back, his hand drifting toward his weapon. The moment he pulled the gun, everything slowed down. I noticed ridiculous details, the way the sunlight hit the hood of my car, the sound of insects in the trees, the slight shake in his hand as he aimed at me. That shake scared me more than the gun itself. A shaking hand means fear, and fear makes people unpredictable. He shouted for me to get out of the car, voice cracking, telling me he'd drop me if I didn't move fast enough. So I narrated my own survival. Seatbelt off. Door open with my foot. One leg out, then the other. I stood up slowly, and that seemed to make him even more nervous. He backed away, gun still trained on my chest, yelling commands that didn't quite make sense. People started to notice. A car slowed. Someone across the street stopped what they were doing. I saw phones come out. One kid was filming, and I remember thinking, at least there's a witness. He ordered me to turn around, hands on the car. The metal was hot against my palms. I told him my credentials were in my jacket, that this could be resolved easily if he just checked. He laughed. Said fake IDs were common. Accused me of lying. Then he grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back hard enough to make me grit my teeth. He said I was under arrest for resisting. I hadn't resisted anything. When I told him who I really was, that I worked for the federal government, he laughed again, louder this time, like I'd just told him a joke. He said impersonating an officer was a felony. That was when I realized he wasn't just wrong, he was committed to being wrong. This was his story now, and he wasn't letting facts get in the way. Backup arrived fast, sirens cutting through the quiet neighborhood. That should have made me feel safer, but it didn't. More officers meant more adrenaline, more noise, more chances for something to go very wrong. He told them I was hostile, that the crowd was aggressive. The crowd was 2 teenagers and a guy holding a rake. One of the younger officers looked uncertain. I caught his eye and spoke directly to him, not pleading, just stating facts, telling him to check my jacket before this went any further. I told him if he put me in a car without doing that, it would follow him for the rest of his career. Before he could move, a different kind of silence fell over the street. A black sedan pulled up and out stepped a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. Everyone knew who he was. The chief. He took in the scene with one look: the gun, the cuffs, the phones recording everything. He told the young officer to retrieve my jacket. The man holding me tried to object. The chief shut him down with a look that said, "You've already said enough." When the badge came out of the jacket, when that federal seal caught the light, you could feel the shift. It was like the air itself moved. The chief addressed me by name, apologized quietly, and then turned to the officer who'd started it all. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He ordered my cuffs removed. Watching that man fumble with the keys was surreal. His hands shook so badly he could barely unlock them. When they came off, I didn't rush. I took my time, rolled my shoulders, let the cameras see everything. The chief stepped closer to him, reached out, and ripped the badge off his chest. The sound of tearing fabric was louder than any siren. In that moment, he wasn't an officer anymore. He was just a guy in a wrinkled uniform staring at a hole where his authority used to be. I arrested him myself. Read him his rights in the same calm voice I'd used all afternoon. The crowd didn't cheer. They exhaled. It felt like something ugly had finally been dragged into the light. What happened after that was slower, but just as brutal. The video spread everywhere. The department distanced itself. The union dropped him overnight. His lawyer quit. His family left. His accounts were frozen. Everything he'd built on fear and intimidation collapsed in days. People who used to wave at him crossed the street instead. He went from being untouchable to being alone. A year later, I saw him again, this time in a courtroom. He looked smaller, older, like gravity had finally remembered him. The judge listened, watched the footage, and didn't buy his excuses. She talked about trust, about how power without accountability poisons everything it touches. When she read the sentence, 25 years, the room went quiet. He looked at me once like he wanted me to say something. I didn't. When reporters asked me outside if justice had been served, I told them justice isn't loud. It's not instant. Sometimes it takes cameras, witnesses, and a lot of patience. Sometimes it takes someone refusing to play the role they've been assigned. So here's my question for you. Was that justice, or was it just accountability finally catching up? How many moments like this go unseen because there's no camera, no witness, no one willing to speak calmly when everything inside them is screaming? I want to hear what you think. Drop a comment. Share your own experience. Challenge me if you disagree. Because these conversations matter, and silence is the only thing that ever really protects the wrong people.